So, Irene, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Oh, thank you for
Last,
asking me.
yes, exciting. The last time we worked together was when you offered some support for our asylum seekers and
Yeah,
refugees in Morecambe.
that's
You
right.
came with everything that anyone could ever do art with: clay, pencils, pens, crayons. It was like a
Oh,
little Aladdin's cave, and
oh,
very moving what people produced. So
it
that was our
was.
last project together. So it's
Mm,
nice to be back, possibly with you
yeah,
do something else at the centre. So we can talk about that in a bit later.
absolutely.
So you're a counsellor and an expressive arts practitioner,
Mm,
and you train counsellors and you train expressive arts practitioners.
yeah.
And so what I wanted to start asking you is, as a counsellor, why did you think something's missing or I need to add something to my skill set and then go towards the expressive arts? What was it about that made you think we need to
Well,
add this spin?
if I do a bit of a rewind,
Yeah.
I started my counselling training when actually what I was doing was facilitating group work. Um, when I was working as a teaching fellow in the action learning groups, and had a conversation about my manager said, I'm not sure we have the skill set to hold people safely. So off I went to do some counselling training. And I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was because I trained with Dinah Brown. And Dinah, it was just routinely part of what we did that we trained in talking therapy, but we also trained in using what's called the creative connection, which is the person-centered expressive art that Natalie Rogers developed. And so I hadn't realized kind of what a boon that was in working with clients. And when I first started working with clients, I would, as I kind of was building my confidence, I would use talking therapy, and that was a bigger part. And then it was as if the expressive part that I'd learned kind of just sat alongside, and I would offer it sometimes. And slowly over the years, I think what I came to not just understand in my head, but in my body and in the relationships was that it is so powerful for people when words aren't enough.
Mm.
And that with the expressive arts, what it helps is people not only don't have the words for things, but sometimes they have to be supported and learn how to trust that they have the answers, not in just kind of their mind, but in their body as well. And it's about if we can offer those circumstances and the relationship, because I absolutely believe it's the relationship that heals, that then something really special can happen. And the more and more over the years that I've kind of built my own confidence and my own way of working with these things, it just shows me again and again and again what a difference it can make for people when there's something other than talking. And it's not to say that talking therapy doesn't work. It does, because let's go back to basics. It's the relationship that heals. But there's something about a relationship that kind of creates that space where somebody can express themselves in so many different ways that really the type of healing, the depth of healing goes further, it goes deeper. And it's just wonderful and very humbling to be alongside somebody on that journey and see again and again and again the impact of offering somebody an experience which sadly so many adults don't have access to or have denied themselves access.
Mm.
So many clients will say, oh, I can't do this because I can't draw. Well, it's never about being artistic. And a lot of them are carrying messages from the school system about what it means to be artistic or creative. And, if somebody's experienced that, then kind of opening their whole way of being up to permission to express themselves exactly how they want, in the way they want, that works for them, it makes such a difference.
I'll just share something exactly what you just said. When I first came from Iran, when I was 10 years old, and I was in boarding school, and I didn't speak English. So it took me a few months to learn English, and I was in an art class. I only knew it was art because there was paints and stuff out. And the teacher, she was always really angry, and she came out and she was teaching about collage. So I didn't understand the words. I was just following what I thought she was saying, which was get a newspaper, cut round it, stick it down. So I didn't know what the brief was. So I did the thing. I knew a few words, but not much. Anyway, I did what I thought. I was only 10, right? I did what I thought. And at the end, she was really angry. But anyway, she came marching across to my table, picked up my thing like that. And I thought, oh, I've done a good job. She's going to, say, hey, everyone, look at this. And she said, if you want to know how not to do a collage, look at this. That was my introduction to art in the UK. And you can imagine what happened to my artistic endeavors following that encounter. So I know exactly what you mean. And I work with people with sound and with voice. And every single person that comes, our first session is always about what are the blocks for you to express yourself. And everyone has been told you can't sing, you don't, and and also the societal messages. It's not just the individual experiences, it's the messages we get from society about who we should be, what our place in the world is. If you're academic, you're not artistic. If you're, there's so many blocks, there's so many reasons why we're not allowed to express who we truly are, whether it's by voice, dancing, movement, art, creative expression. So sacred work that you do is really beautiful. I can hear your passion for it.
Oh, love it. And again, if we think about the work that we recently did with the refugee and asylum seekers, I mean, what they had was the materials laid out for them and a gentle encouragement, but the freedom, well, you might do this, you might do that. And some of the images that people created they were heartbreaking,
Yeah,
and some of them had enough English to help me understand. And some of the images were glorious and made me feel very humble about. And again, it takes me back to, the idea of Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, that in the concentration camps, what he noticed was the choices people made. And even in such awful circumstances, they might choose to stand and be in awe of a beautiful sunset. And some of these men at the project, given the history and the stories and what they'd experienced, they would put images down and they would be saying, oh, this is what I want in this country, or this is how grateful I am for what's been offered. All of these really heartwarming, and it's not quite aspirational, isn't the word, but this ability to look past where they were just in this moment to what they wanted to be pleased by, in awe of, and so on. And again, it just reinforced the power of offering somebody that space and that time and the materials to express themselves.
yeah. We had a lot of flowers and roses and
Oh,
yeah,
beautiful things. We
very
had
beautiful.
clay, folks. We had clay. And some of them were a bit like, well, so I gave them a little guidance, and we ended up creating a tree of life almost. And they created leaves and things. And it was beautiful because they were telling me, some of them, this is a leaf of a plant that grows in my country. So they were bringing something of their past and bringing it here. And, and some were doing things. Somebody did something for his daughter, and he was photographing it and he wanted to send it to her and things like that. And again, that sense of this was a space that they could make use of in the way they wanted to. And it did offer something that helped them connect with we talk in counselling training about when you're counselling, it's not the doing, it's the being.
Mm.
And I think the same thing happens when people are given this opportunity. They have an opportunity to be how they want to be. You know, there's materials, there's ways of expressing yourself. You can be in the moment how you want to be and communicate it with me. And you don't have to have the words for it. You know, you can choose your own way.
I'll have to
Yeah.
find some funding for us to do this work again.
Oh,
But,
yes.
so I wonder if now's a good time to do your first practice suggestion.
Well, one of the things, it's in the title, isn't it, for tonight, was about trauma. And of course, every one of those men had experienced trauma. And in trauma work, if you do nothing else, the first pillar is about safety. And so what I have to offer to people is a way of identifying your safe place. So again, in working expressively, very often, depending on what the client brings, because it's never about revisiting trauma, never. It's always about creating safety. And then it's the client's choice if they want to work with the trauma. But doing activities about identifying your own safe place can be really helpful. And so I've pared this down to literally you just need a pen and paper. So if you have coloured pens, that's fabulous. You can kind of go for it a bit more in a way that suits you. That's fine. That's all you need. Now, when I talk a bit more about this particular approach, what Natalie Rogers taught was about using your non-dominant hand, which for me is my left hand because I write with my right hand. That's my dominant hand. Using your non-dominant hand when you do activities. And again, that's a choice for you. You may try that if you want. If it's not comfortable, stick with your dominant. But why we do that is because it's a way, if you like it, if I simplify it, to literally shut off that logical dominant part of your brain and let the non-dominant, which is very often, that deeper side, the subconscious, we might tap into archetypal images, but it helps you to let go of that. So you would use your non-dominant hand when working with the creative connection. So what I thought we might do is a little thing around safe place writing. So creating that mental safe space through a little bit of descriptive writing. And with all of these sorts of activities, and you can offer this to yourself as well, you would, and I'm sure it's very familiar to you all, you would simply try to go to the breathing. So my invitation, it's always an invitation, if it feels comfortable, would be to follow my instructions with your eyes closed. If that's not comfortable, simply lower your gaze and let it go slightly out of focus towards the floor, whatever feels right for you. So if we take a moment, close our eyes or let them rest out of focus. And first of all, we're just going to attend to the breath going in and out of our body. Don't have to change the pace of your breathing. Simply notice a few breaths going in and out. Perhaps gently label them in and out. And if any thoughts drift into your mind, simply label them thinking, let them go. And I invite you to imagine a place where you feel completely safe and at peace. This might be a real place. It might be a memory. It might be something imaginary. Allow yourself to connect with that place. Notice what you hear, smell, feel. Perhaps there's somebody with you. And when you're ready, open your eyes and just spend 5 minutes describing this place in as much detail as possible, using as much sensory detail about smell, taste, touch, feeling, whatever comes to you. And I'll check the time for you. Another 2 minutes. Another minute.
So that was interesting because I didn't want to use my right hand. I'm left-handed. I hope that was okay.
So now what we're going to do is experience what makes the creative connection different? Because we've approached one way of expressing ourselves. Now I want to invite you to just gently close your eyes again if that feels okay, or just take your attention inward and try to feel as if you're feeling your body from the inside. And try and remember how it felt when I offered you that invitation to create something. How did that feel? And then just take a moment to reflect on how imagining that space, how you felt in response to that process. And then think about how can you bring aspects of that into your daily life? Is there anything there that perhaps you could bring some of that? It's something that you could offer yourself that you don't already. Okay.
Interrupted you, sorry. I didn't realize that was you.
It's fine. We had that. We had a moment anyway. We were going
That
to
was a
move
beautiful
to another
exercise.
thing.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, like you said, that trying to use your non-dominant hand, especially for writing,
Yeah.
and again, there's a little trick that I can offer you. And sometimes what people find is if they do the process holding the pen in their right, and they're really struggling, keep hold of the pen in your non-dominant while you do the writing.
Oh, yeah.
There's something as well about if we're trying to write with a non-dominant hand, we have to let go of some control, don't we, of how it looks,
Mm.
because we can, most of us, if we're okay with writing, then we can get something down. But yeah, it can be really tricky, can't it?
Mm.
Sometimes letting go of that. Oh, what to do it with this hand?
It wasn't quick enough.
Exactly. You have to slow down, don't you?
Yeah. So you were just talking about trauma in the just before we started, and what I wanted to ask you was in terms of how, with all the people that you've worked with, how do you think, I mean, it's a big word, trauma. It can mean
Mhm.
many things to many people, but in your experience, how does it manifest in the people that you treat? Because one of the reasons why I keep wanting to talk about this and do lots of psychoeducation as much as and raise awareness is because for many of us who've experienced any kind of trauma, we don't actually know that's what's happened.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so we don't have that kind of awareness because no one's talking about it really. I mean, we're talking about it a lot more now, but we don't necessarily realize the ways we've adapted, the ways we're responding to the world is because of what's happened to us and what might continue to be happening to us.
yeah,
So I was just wondering if you could just throw some light on there, so in case anyone watching will think, oh, right, okay, so that's how I respond to the world. Maybe
mm,
I need to get some support around that. Maybe it's not just my personality, and maybe it's not just my default. Maybe there's not something wrong with me, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So what are the ways in which you think traumatic experiences might manifest in people's lives, in the lives of people you've worked with? What does it
Well,
look like?
what I've learned, and again, so for a long time, I was working with people labelled, because we don't like to label people in a person-centered approach, but people given this label of eating disorders.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of work in eating disorders. And what I came to realize when I actually extended my practice into emotion-focused therapy was that, oh gosh, eating disorders, it's never about food, it's about emotion regulation. And then the next insight that I gained was that actually that emotion, that emotional aspect of it, whether people over-regulated their emotions, so in other words, kept them squashed down, or had difficulty with regulating emotions, in other words, you could be a bit chaotic, that this was all connected with the eating disorder, which very often was some kind of trauma. So, again, like you said quite rightly, it's not just one thing trauma, and it can be a result of completely different things for different people. And we know a lot more, thank goodness, than we did. But for me, in my work, what I've recognized is I have to go right back to the core of what I believe in my work, which that so there's a technical term in this approach. It's called the actualizing tendency for growth. And it came to Carl Rogers from looking at potatoes. So if anybody's found an old spud in the back of their cupboard, these shoots start to come out, don't they? Off they go. They'll find a way out. And that was his stimulus, because he realized that this organism was moving to the light and trying to grow. So we have this idea that we call the actualizing tendency for growth. And I absolutely believe that that is the foundation. And so when it comes to working with people who've experienced trauma, the first thing and the basis for what I do is to trust in the actualizing tendency for growth. And I think as practitioners, that what that stops you doing, and it stops me doing, is trying to push the river. We work at the person's speed, focus, whatever they want, because I absolutely believe that we all have an actualizing tendency for growth. But what feeds it, again, another technical term, is what Rogers called the organismic valuing process. So if we think about somebody, for instance, there's a really horrible case I'm seeing on the local news here about a young woman who took her life as a result of what seems to be controlling and coercing behavior, domestic violence. And so in those sorts of circumstances, you can see how somebody's tendency for growth is stunted because of the environment. And also, there is no one offering them this valuing process, this organismic valuing. And that's what happens in counselling, that empathy, that unconditional valuing, a positive regard, the congruence as well. And so in my work in trauma, working with people who've experienced trauma, I've actually kind of gone backwards in simplifying, thinking about what I do. And so trauma can take so many different presentations, if you like, and affect people in so many different ways that I think if we kind of remember, so Babette Rothschild's work, I'm a great fan of her work, and also Kathy Malchiodi, who's an expressive arts therapist. First and foremost, it's safety. How do I create a safe environment? I value that person unconditionally. I don't try to take them somewhere or diagnose them or analyze them. I try to be fully with them. And so for me, working with trauma is about helping somebody find that emotional regulation state that helps them to feel safe. Because in the emotion focused work, we say you have to arrive at an emotion before you can leave it and go through it. And of course, if somebody has never had that opportunity, and is offered that and chooses to make use of that, then something really wonderful can happen because their tendency for growth is stimulated and change can
Become
happen.
full potatoes.
All potatoes.
Potatoes with full potential.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So another way that I always think about it is nothing within me is working against me. I
No.
think, and I repeat this to people I work with all the time and to students, it's, nothing within me is working against me. So whatever part you have,
Yeah.
whether there's a part of you that sabotages you, whether there's a part of you that procrastinates, whether there's a part that resists or doesn't want you to move forward, a part of you that's scared, a part of you that wants you to stay isolated, all these parts of you are trying to keep you safe.
And
That
they're all parts of you.
they're all parts of you. Yeah.
So one of the ideas that we use is the idea of configurations of self. And the image I usually offer my students is, imagine it's a dinner party and you've got the table set out. Who do you want at the table? Who's at the top of the table and who do you want to leave in the kitchen? Because we all have parts of us that we might invite some to come and have a meal with us and we want them to be near us and keep them close. And there are parts of us that we want to push out. They're all part of us.
They're all parts.
Exactly. And, there aren't good and bad parts. That's another thing I think it's important in this work to help people understand. And as you said, that's lovely. No part of us is working against us. They're all part of us.
Yeah. Trying to keep us safe, trying to help
Exactly.
us survive. Yeah. So, do you have another practice for us we could do?
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
it's a
so
good
we've
one.
done a little bit of work there on a very simple practice which you might do, um, to get that sense of where's my safe place. And sometimes it can be useful to have a practice like that if you're feeling kind of a bit wobbly or a bit unsafe. So what I thought we might do, and I've just been talking about emotions, haven't I? So doodle emotions. And so the idea here is about using mark making. So in the expressive way, we're never talking about, doing something artistic. We're doing mark making. We're moving onto the page. And again, this is why it can be really important and helpful to use the non-dominant hand so that literally you allow the emotions to move through your body, down your hands, onto the paper. So how about we have a go at a bit of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, as before, prepare yourself by simply resting your eyes, closing your eyes, taking your attention to your breath. And as before, I'll mark the time for us. And we'll probably take about 3-4 minutes for the doodling part. Okay, so take your attention to your breath. Allow your shoulders to drop away from your ears. Notice your breath moving in and out. And as before, don't have to force it. Any thoughts come in, label them thinking, let them go. What we're going to do now is some simple mark making. Just notice how you're feeling in this moment. Is there an emotion? Is there perhaps a sense in your body somewhere? Attention to what's happening inside you. Is there a feeling anywhere? And when you feel you've got a handle on what your feeling is, what your emotion is, open your eyes and allow your pen to move on the paper and simply express without any plan, judgment. Just let it move on the paper. Notice where it goes as you try to express what it felt like. Is it jagged? Is it smooth? What is it? Allow it to move instinctively. Whatever shapes you want to make. We'll just take one more minute. And when you feel ready, just look at your image. Are there any words that go with this? And capture them on the paper for yourself. Something you might offer yourself afterwards is notice, is there a word that stands out for you on the paper that you've put down? And that might be something from your subconscious that's offering you an invitation to explore further. It might be a word that has meaning for you. It might be an emotion that surprises you. And again, try to do it without judgment. Sometimes the words that emerge that surprise us are the ones that can offer us something extra in exploring our landscape of feelings and emotions. Sometimes words emerge that are a message from our subconscious, something it wants us to pay attention to. So that's something that you can offer yourself afterwards to carry on the work that you've started for yourself.
Is that the end of your practice? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt again. That's it's amazing how simple they are, but how profound the thing that comes out just in 3 minutes.
Well, I think what's profound is the fact that when we switch off that logical brain, oh my goodness, we have the answers inside of us.
Yeah.
It's like our subconscious just looking away there. Just be quiet and take a bit of notice. And that act of just opening that space can be so rich in what emerges. And sometimes I think it's worth as well, just perhaps adding, it might be that something's emerged and you think, what is that about? I remember doing a sound tray one time and this green frog appeared and it's like, green frog, what's that about? And afterwards I went away and looked at the symbolism, and it's like, that makes sense. But other times it might be that it's a word or an image. It might be an image that's appeared for you. You've kind of had an image, but you can't capture it. and you kind of pay attention to that. And that might have meaning either immediately or sometimes later. But yeah, it can be so powerful. And it's not magic, but it is magic
It is magic.
about what can happen in that space when we be with ourselves.
So, is this something you'd encourage people to do every day, like for 5 minutes instead of
Oh, yeah.
journaling? Could you do this instead?
And again, I think it's anything that just holds that space for you. It doesn't have to be, a really long, intense practice. Um, just holds that space for a little while where you allow your brain to empty and you allow your subconscious and, that inner wisdom to come forward. Um, in Natalie Rogers' work, when she devised this, if you like, based on her father, Carl Rogers' work, she drew on Jungian ideas, Gestalt, different ideas. And for me, what I particularly enjoy is the idea of, that when we open the subconscious, the images, the metaphors, the archetypes that can come forth when we go deeper and deeper, that can be so insightful and healing.
Mm.
But when working with trauma, it's about these are gentle, non-threatening ways of starting. And, with some clients, it might be some time before they feel safe to even just draw a line on a paper
Yeah.
because of judgment or expectations, or even just not giving themselves permission to do something that they might want to try or do. So simple, gentle activities like this, can be a really safe way to start with clients, something very non-threatening.
Mm.
But
Do you
yeah,
find that group work is better for people who are beginners into, so the idea is really to reconnect and come home to yourself, isn't it? For
mm,
any kind
mm,
of healing modality, is for us
yeah,
to just, that's the end product, if you want to say, if there is an end
yeah,
in any way,
yeah,
is for us to
yeah,
connect to ourselves
yes,
and to come home to ourselves and accept ourselves
yeah.
for who we are. So, do you find for anyone who's a beginner in that process, would a group be safer or would one-to-one work?
But it depends what the intent is.
Yeah.
So if it's working with somebody as a client, then very often, it's one-to-one. If it's training, I think group has to happen simply because when we are with others, and so a large part of learning how to offer this to clients, whether as a therapist or somebody who offers groups. So Jill, I'm remembering, has got a social work background. And so I have somebody who wants to do our training because she wants to run women-focused support groups. She doesn't want to be a therapist, but she wants to have those skills and insights and understanding of how to work safely with non-threatening activities that are non-traumatizing, but can have an impact for people. And I think if you're training and learning how to use this with others in a group, again, we have to learn how to be with ourselves before we can be with others. And that's also what happens in a group.
Mhm.
But I don't know whether to bring up the image of Natalie's model.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
because,
have about 5 minutes left. So,
yeah. So let me just try and open this. Can you see that?
yeah,
Oh, where'd that
it's,
go?
it's a bit small.
Is it a bit small? Let's see if I
On my
can.
screen, it's a bit small.
Okay,
Can everyone else see it?
let's full
You
screen.
can see it. Other people
There
can
we
see
go.
it.
Yeah. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Ignore the bottom left-hand corner. That was when I was doing some business to business work. So Natalie Rogers, this is her model of the way that we work when we're doing like person-centered expressive art therapy. And you can see it's meant to be like a vortex that goes out and out. And it starts with that inner journey. And so the inner journey, that's a bit of what we've done tonight. But then if you think about working with trauma, it's at the next level, that next ring where it's about relationship. and connecting to somebody else, an empathic and supportive environment, but also being heard and listened to and witnessed. So a big part of the difference between expressive, person-centered expressive art therapy and traditional art therapy is the emphasis that Natalie placed on empathic witnessing. So sometimes I might just be alongside somebody in silence and being an empathic witness to what they want to create. Does that make sense,
Yeah.
Elham?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can see that in her model, because what she believed, and again, it's about we ripple out to the world, the change that happens in us, and then we can support in somebody else, spreads out into the world, into the community, into the world, into the universe. And I always used to say to my students at the uni, go out and make the world a better place, spread that kindness. Yeah. So that's Natalie's model of how the creative connection works, by starting with ourselves and then learning to be in relationship, which we are when we're offering this, either as therapists or as facilitators. And then that can go into the community, into the world, into the universe. Because she was also she was very clear on social change, social justice. She did a lot of group work in that area with this as well. So I can talk for hours about this.
Yeah. Interesting. The way we approach working with people is we kind of bypass the self work initially, and we leapfrog straight into the relationship and building bridges and building safety through relationship, and then through that safety, we kind of eventually work backwards into the self. Yeah, we
Yeah,
start with the relationship first.
with the relationship with the self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have just a few minutes left. I don't know if you wanted to do another practice or want to leave that to another
Well,
time.
I mean,
When,
what I could do is
or you want to give that to us for
give
homework?
that to you for homework. Yeah.
I'll share that, right?
And and share that. And this one's about, seeing what your heart wants to say, because this is heart-centered work. You do heart-centered work. I do heart-centered work. All of you that have a professional background in some way are doing heart-centered work. Wherever you work, if we're in relationship with people, it's heart-centered, isn't it?
Or maybe we can spend 1 minute because I think your question was, what does your heart want to say? Is that right?
Yes, yes, it is.
Shall we
Yeah.
just come
Okay.
in a minute? Maybe our hearts can speak in 1 minute.
Okay. So very simply, I won't guide you. You know how to go into the space now, and draw yourself a heart on the paper when you're ready, and connect to your inner self. And inside the outline of your heart, you might write, you might doodle. There might be phrases or something about what does your heart want to say to you? What does your heart want to say to you?
By me. Apparently, my heart had a lot to say. Most of it is have fun, dance more, do more
Right.
art, go out into nature more, learn an instrument, do more art. Mine was just all about play. That's probably because we've opened up that
Yeah, yeah.
space. So part of me is now thinking that I want you to lead us into a 6-week group where we can play online. Yeah, can we do that? Is anyone interested in that? Yes. Yes, good. So we're going to leave the recording here for in a minute, and I just want to say thank you so much. It's been really beautiful. It's like a really, really You've teased us with it. I want more now.
Oh,
But you
oh,
can see how powerful it is, even though we had three
oh.
minutes. Amazing things have
Always,
been done on my
always.
paper. Yeah, even online. So Irene, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank
And I'm going to
you.
stop the recording now, and the people who are here, we're going to have a conversation together. All right. Thank you so much, Irene.